The courtroom cameras captured something that would break the internet within 24 hours. Karen Westbrook, a 340-pound woman with a history that would make your blood boil, sat in a plaintiff's chair with tissues clutched in both hands. Her face contorted into what looked like genuine anguish as she prepared to tell Judge Judy about her traumatic experience at a local gym. The tears began flowing right on cue, streaming down her flushed cheeks as her voice cracked with manufactured emotion. She pressed a trembling hand against her chest, her shoulders shaking as she gasped for air between sobs. The audience watched with growing sympathy. Several women in the gallery dabbed at their own eyes, clearly moved by this display of raw vulnerability. But Judge Judy's expression remained absolutely frozen, her sharp eyes locked onto Karen's face with the intensity of a predator studying prey. What happened in the next 3 seconds would expose the most brazen courtroom performance in television history and turn Karen Westbrook into the most hated woman on the internet overnight. Before those fake tears even had time to dry, Judge Judy would deliver a call-out so savage, so perfectly timed, so absolutely devastating that it would be replayed over 80 million times across every social media platform imaginable. This wasn't just another case of someone lying in court. This was the complete and total destruction of a woman who had turned fake victimhood into a six-figure career, a professional scammer who had perfected the art of weaponizing tears to destroy innocent small business owners. Karen Westbrook had won this game 6 times before, walking away with over $100,000 in fraudulent settlements by playing the discrimination card and sobbing her way to victory. She had destroyed 3 businesses, bankrupted 2 families, and ruined countless reputations with nothing more than crocodile tears and a victim narrative she could turn on and off like a light switch. Today was supposed to be her biggest payday yet, a $50,000 lawsuit against a struggling gym owner who had committed the unforgivable crime of enforcing his membership contract. Karen had studied her previous performances, practiced her breakdown in front of mirrors, and walked into Judge Judy's courtroom with the unshakable confidence of someone who had never faced real consequences for her manipulations. But Karen Westbrook had made one catastrophic miscalculation that would haunt her for the rest of her life. She assumed that Judge Judy was just another authority figure who could be manipulated with tears and sympathy, another obstacle that could be overcome with a good enough performance. She had no idea that Judge Judy's research team had spent the previous week digging through her entire litigation history, uncovering a pattern of behavior so calculated and predatory that it would shock even the most cynical courtroom observers. She had no idea that every sob, every theatrical pause, every trembling hand gesture was being analyzed by a legal mind that had crushed 20,000 cases before breakfast. She had no idea that her Oscar-worthy performance was about to be destroyed in exactly 3 seconds, and that the humiliation she was about to experience would become legendary in the annals of courtroom television. Before we show you the exact moment Judge Judy catches Karen in the most obvious lie ever told on national television, you need to hit that like button right now because what you're about to witness will restore your faith in justice and make you question every crying person you've ever believed. Subscribe to this channel immediately because Judge Judy's 3-second takedown is just the opening act of a complete systematic destruction that will leave Karen sobbing real tears of humiliation instead of her usual manufactured performance. Trust me when I tell you that what happens in this courtroom will make you want to stand up and applaud, and the aftermath of this case will prove that karma doesn't just exist, it has perfect timing and no mercy for professional victims who make a living destroying innocent people. The stakes of this case couldn't have been higher for everyone involved. On one side sat Robert Chen, a 47-year-old immigrant who had spent the last decade building his dream of owning a small fitness center. He had invested every penny of his life savings into FitLife Gym, a modest facility in a working-class neighborhood where he offered affordable memberships to people who couldn't afford the fancy corporate chains. Robert employed 3 staff members, all single mothers who depended on their paychecks to feed their families. He operated on razor-thin profit margins, reinvesting most of his earnings back into equipment and facility improvements. He was the kind of small business owner who remembered every member's name, who stayed late to help people learn proper form, who gave free memberships to seniors on fixed incomes. His gym wasn't just a business, it was a community center where neighbors became friends and strangers became family. But Karen Westbrook was about to destroy everything Robert had built with nothing more than fake tears and a discrimination lawsuit that had absolutely no basis in reality. On the other side sat Karen Westbrook, and her story was something entirely different. At 52 years old, Karen had discovered that her size could be weaponized for profit in America's litigation-happy culture. Over the past 3 years, she had filed 6 separate lawsuits against small businesses, and she had won or settled every single one of them using the exact same playbook. Karen's first victim had been a small family-owned restaurant in the suburbs where she had demanded to be seated at a specific booth despite the hostess explaining it was reserved for a party of 6. When the manager politely asked if she would be more comfortable at a larger table that could accommodate her size more easily, Karen had exploded into a theatrical meltdown that would set the template for her future scams. She collapsed into sobs right there in the crowded dining room, wailing about discrimination and body shaming while other diners watched in horror. She posted scathing reviews on every platform imaginable, created multiple fake accounts to amplify her claims, and threatened to contact local news stations about the restaurant's discriminatory practices. The terrified owners, an elderly couple who had run the restaurant for 30 years, settled out of court for $8,000 just to make the nightmare stop. Karen had discovered gold, and she was just getting started with her systematic destruction of small business owners who couldn't afford prolonged legal battles. Her second target was a boutique clothing store where she had tried on multiple items and become enraged when nothing fit properly. Instead of accepting that the store simply didn't carry her size, Karen manufactured a discrimination claim, complete with her now signature sobbing performance in front of other customers. She accused the young saleswoman of making fatphobic comments, claimed the owner had laughed at her body, and threatened legal action for emotional distress and public humiliation. The store owner, a single mother barely making ends meet, couldn't afford a lawyer or the negative publicity. She settled for $12,000, money she had to borrow from family members, and the stress of the situation forced her to close the store 6 months later. Karen walked away with a check and immediately began scouting for her next victim, her confidence growing with each successful manipulation. The pattern continued with surgical precision. A movie theater became victim number 3 when Karen demanded a refund and free tickets after claiming the seats were too small and that staff had humiliated her in front of other moviegoers. Her performance that day was particularly impressive, complete with hyperventilating and claims of a panic attack that required paramedics to be called. The theater chain, terrified of viral social media backlash, settled for $15,000 within weeks. Then came an airline where Karen created such a scene about seat size that other passengers filmed her meltdown, which she then used as evidence of her public humiliation. The airline settled for $25,000 to avoid the PR nightmare. A hotel was next, where Karen claimed she was mocked by staff about needing a reinforced bed frame. That performance earned her $18,000. Finally, a car dealership became victim number 6 when she claimed a salesman had made jokes about whether vehicles could support her weight during a test drive. She walked away with $22,000 from that settlement. In just 3 years, Karen Westbrook had extracted over $100,000 from small businesses and corporations using nothing but fake tears, manufactured outrage, and the very real fear that companies have of discrimination lawsuits in modern America. She had perfected her craft to the point where she could cry on command, where she knew exactly which words would trigger maximum sympathy, where she understood that the threat of viral social media exposure was often more powerful than any actual legal case. She had become a professional victim, and business was booming. Karen had even started giving advice to others online, posting in forums about how to maximize settlement payouts and which types of businesses were most likely to settle quickly. She bragged to friends about her supplemental income, calling it her retirement fund. She studied each case like a method actor preparing for a role, practicing her breakdowns and timing her tears for maximum impact. She had convinced herself that she wasn't really doing anything wrong, that these businesses deserved to be punished for not being more accommodating, that she was actually performing a public service by forcing companies to be more sensitive. But her confidence had made her sloppy. She used the same lawyers for multiple cases. She posted about her victories on social media using her real name. She told the same stories with only minor variations. She even bragged in online reviews about how she had made businesses pay for their discrimination. Karen Westbrook had created a paper trail that any competent investigator could follow, and she had no idea that Judge Judy's research team was exactly that kind of competent. They had pulled records from all 6 previous cases. They had interviewed the business owners she had destroyed. They had collected her social media posts where she boasted about her legal victories. They had even found security camera footage from 3 different establishments showing Karen practicing her crying routine before entering to make her complaints. The evidence was overwhelming, damning, and absolutely devastating. Now Karen was going after Robert Chen and his small gym, and this was supposed to be her biggest score yet. She had joined FitLife Gym with a monthly membership that included a standard cancellation clause requiring 30 days notice and a small processing fee. Karen attended exactly twice in her first month, never came back after that, and then 2 months later decided she wanted to cancel without paying the required fee. When Robert politely but firmly explained that the contract she had signed required the cancellation fee, Karen saw opportunity instead of obligation. She immediately shifted into victim mode, claiming that Robert had looked at her with disgust, that he had made comments about her body, that his tone had been discriminatory and hateful. Robert had tried to reason with Karen, showing her the contract she had signed with her own signature clearly visible on the cancellation policy section. He explained that he enforced this policy equally with all members regardless of size, age, or any other factor. He even offered to waive half the fee as a courtesy, hoping to resolve the situation amicably. But Karen wasn't interested in reasonable solutions. She wanted a payday, and Robert's attempt at compromise was interpreted as weakness. That's when Karen escalated to her tried-and-true method of destruction. She collapsed on the gym floor in the middle of the afternoon when the facility was packed with members, screaming about discrimination and body shaming while sobbing uncontrollably. Several members pulled out their phones and started recording, which was exactly what Karen wanted. She made sure her performance was loud enough and dramatic enough that everyone in the building could witness her victimhood. She clutched her chest and wailed about emotional trauma, about being triggered, about how Robert's cruelty had destroyed her mental health and self-esteem. The damage to Robert's business was immediate and catastrophic. Karen posted the member-recorded videos across every social media platform, editing them to remove all context and make it appear that Robert had viciously attacked her for no reason. She created multiple fake accounts to amplify her story, posting one-star reviews that claimed the gym discriminated against plus-size members and that the owner was a fatphobic bully who enjoyed humiliating customers. Within 48 hours, the videos had been viewed hundreds of thousands of times locally. Comment sections filled with outrage from people who had no idea they were watching a professional scammer at work. Robert's phone rang non-stop with angry calls from people threatening to protest his business. His email inbox overflowed with hateful messages calling him every name imaginable. Members began canceling their subscriptions in droves, not wanting to be associated with a business that had been branded as discriminatory. In just 2 weeks, Robert lost 47 members, which translated to over $23,000 in lost annual revenue for a small business that was already operating on thin margins. Robert's 3 employees, all single mothers who depended on their paychecks, watched in horror as their workplace became the target of an online mob. They tried to defend Robert on social media, explaining that he was the kindest employer they had ever had, that he had never discriminated against anyone, that Karen's claims were completely false. But their voices were drowned out by the tsunami of manufactured outrage. Robert hired a lawyer he couldn't afford, spending $8,000 in legal fees just to prepare his defense against Karen's $50,000 lawsuit. He lay awake every night wondering how his dream of business ownership had turned into this nightmare. His wife begged him to just settle and make it go away, but Robert refused on principle. He knew he had done nothing wrong, and something deep inside him couldn't let this professional liar destroy everything he had built without a fight. When Judge Judy's show reached out asking if he would be willing to have his case heard on national television, Robert agreed immediately, seeing it as his only chance to clear his name and expose the truth about Karen Westbrook. Karen, meanwhile, was absolutely thrilled about the Judge Judy opportunity. She told friends this would be her moment of ultimate vindication, her chance to expose Robert's discrimination to millions of viewers and secure the largest settlement of her career. She spent weeks preparing for her performance, practicing her crying routine 47 times until she could produce tears on command within seconds. She studied previous Judge Judy episodes, taking notes on what seemed to generate sympathy from the judge and audience. She carefully selected her outfit, choosing clothes that were deliberately tight and uncomfortable, knowing that visible physical discomfort would enhance her victim narrative. She prepared props, packing multiple packs of tissues, a water bottle, and even anxiety medication in clear view, all designed to paint the picture of someone genuinely traumatized and struggling. She rehearsed her story until every pause, every voice crack, every trembling hand gesture was perfectly choreographed for maximum emotional impact. Karen posted on social media about her upcoming television appearance, telling her followers that she was going to make Judge Judy see the truth about discrimination against plus-size people. She bragged to friends that she would probably become famous from this, that the publicity would be worth even more than the settlement money. She fantasized about book deals and speaking engagements, imagining herself as a champion for body positivity and victims' rights. Her confidence was absolutely unshakable because her method had worked 6 times before without fail. She had never encountered anyone who could see through her performance, never faced a judge who questioned her tears, never dealt with an authority figure who didn't immediately offer sympathy and support. Karen Westbrook walked into that courthouse on the day of filming believing she was about to have her greatest triumph, completely unaware that she was actually walking into a carefully constructed trap that would expose her as a fraud to over 80 million people and destroy her scam operation forever. The morning of the taping, Karen went through her pre-performance ritual with the dedication of a professional athlete preparing for competition. She applied her makeup carefully, making sure it would run dramatically when the tears came. She rubbed baby oil under her eyes, a trick she had learned that made it look like tears were flowing even when they weren't. She skipped breakfast to ensure her stomach would be empty, knowing that genuine physical discomfort would make her performance more convincing. She practiced her breathing exercises, the ones that allowed her to create the appearance of hyperventilation and panic without actually losing control. Karen Westbrook had turned courtroom manipulation into a science, and today she was ready to deliver her masterpiece. She arrived at the studio early, ignoring Robert Chin completely as they waited in separate areas. She could see the fear in his eyes, the exhaustion on his face, and it only increased her confidence. This immigrant gym owner was no match for her years of experience destroying people exactly like him. When the production assistant called her name and led her toward the courtroom, Karen took one final deep breath and stepped into character, letting her shoulders slump and her expression shift into one of wounded vulnerability. The courtroom doors opened and Karen made her entrance with the dramatic flair of someone who had rehearsed this moment dozens of times. She walked slowly, her head bowed, already dabbing at her eyes with a crumpled tissue before Judge Judy had even entered the room. Her breathing was deliberately labored, her hand pressed against her chest as if she could barely contain her emotional anguish. Several audience members immediately looked sympathetic, whispering to each other about how clearly traumatized this poor woman appeared to be. Karen took her position at the plaintiff's stand, her entire body language screaming victim. She clutched her folder of evidence against her chest like a shield, her hands trembling in what appeared to be genuine fear. The tissues were prominently displayed, along with her water bottle and medication, all carefully arranged to paint the picture of someone barely holding themselves together. Judge Judy entered and took her seat, her face an unreadable mask as she reviewed the case file one final time. The silence in the courtroom was heavy with anticipation. This was supposed to be a simple discrimination case, 15 minutes of testimony followed by a quick ruling. Nobody in that room except Judge Judy knew they were about to witness television history. Judge Judy's voice cut through the silence with her signature no-nonsense tone. Ms. Westbrook, you're suing Mr. Chen for $50,000, claiming discrimination and emotional distress at his gym. Tell me what happened. It was a simple, straightforward question, the same opening Judge Judy had used in thousands of cases. But Karen's response would immediately signal that something was different about this case. Instead of simply answering the question, Karen launched into a performance that would have made soap opera actors jealous. Her voice was already breaking before she spoke the first word. Your Honor, she began, her hand flying to her chest as her shoulders started shaking, I have never been so humiliated, so degraded, so absolutely destroyed as a human being as I was in that gym. The tears started flowing immediately, right on cue, streaming down her face as she paused to dab at her eyes with exaggerated movements. Her breathing became rapid and shallow, the perfect imitation of someone experiencing genuine trauma. I just wanted to better myself, she continued, her voice rising to a theatrical pitch. I just wanted to get healthy, and this man, this cruel, heartless man looked at me like I was garbage, like I was less than human. Karen's performance was flawless by any objective measure. She had timed her pauses perfectly, allowing her emotion to build naturally. She made eye contact with the audience, letting them see her pain, her vulnerability, her complete devastation. Several women in the gallery were nodding sympathetically, clearly moved by this display. Even the bailiff looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight as if witnessing something genuinely distressing. But Judge Judy's expression hadn't changed even slightly. Her eyes remained locked on Karen's face with an intensity that would have warned anyone paying attention that something was very wrong. Karen was so absorbed in her performance that she completely missed the warning signs. She continued building her emotional crescendo, her voice breaking more dramatically, her tears flowing more freely, her hands trembling more visibly. He made me feel like I didn't deserve to exist, Karen sobbed, her voice now at maximum theatrical trauma. The way he looked at me, the disgust in his eyes, the cruelty in his voice when he said I had to pay that fee, it was like he was telling me that people like me don't belong in his perfect gym with his perfect people. This was the moment Karen had practiced 47 times in her bathroom mirror. This was the crescendo that had worked 6 times before. This was when judges typically interrupted with sympathetic questions, when audiences gasped in horror, when defendants started looking guilty even if they weren't. Karen let her face crumble completely, her shoulders shaking violently as the tears poured down her cheeks. She pressed both hands against her face, her breathing coming in ragged gasps between sobs. The tissue fell from her trembling fingers onto the floor. Her entire body seemed to convulse with the force of her anguish. It was an Oscar-worthy performance, perfectly executed, flawlessly delivered. And Judge Judy destroyed it in exactly 3 seconds. The judge leaned forward slightly, her eyes narrowing as they tracked every detail of Karen's face with surgical precision. 1 second passed as Karen continued her sobbing performance, completely unaware of what was coming. 2 seconds passed as Judge Judy's expression shifted from neutral observation to absolute certainty. 3 seconds, and Judge Judy's voice cut through the courtroom like a blade through butter, sharp and devastating. Cut the act. The 2 words landed like a bomb in the silent courtroom. Karen's face froze mid-sob, her mouth still open, her hands still pressed against her cheeks. The transformation was instantaneous and absolutely damning. The violent shoulder shaking stopped immediately. The ragged breathing normalized in a heartbeat. The tears that had been flowing so freely just vanished as if someone had flipped a switch. Judge Judy continued, her voice dripping with contempt. Those aren't real tears, Ms. Westbrook. That's baby oil you rubbed under your eyes before walking in here. I've been watching you fake cry for the last 90 seconds, and I haven't seen a single genuine tear reach your chin. Your shoulders are shaking, but your breathing hasn't changed. Your voice is breaking, but your eyes are bone dry. I've seen better acting in elementary school plays. The courtroom erupted in gasps as the full weight of the call-out hit everyone simultaneously. Karen's carefully constructed facade crumbled in real time as millions would later watch on replay. Her hands dropped from her face, revealing an expression of pure shock and horror. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving her looking pale and sickly under the courtroom lights. Her mouth opened and closed repeatedly like a fish out of water, but no sounds came out. She reached down to grab the tissue she had dropped, but her hands were shaking so badly now with genuine fear that she couldn't pick it up. The audience members who had been sympathetic moments earlier now looked disgusted, realizing they had almost been manipulated by a professional scammer. Robert Chen sat in stunned silence, hardly daring to believe what he was witnessing. Karen tried desperately to recover, her voice coming out as a strangled whisper. Your Honor, I'm just nervous, the cameras, the pressure, I'm not faking anything, I swear. But Judge Judy was just getting started with her systematic destruction of Karen's credibility and criminal operation. Don't insult my intelligence, Judge Judy said, each word landing like a physical blow. She opened a thick folder that had been sitting on her desk, marked with Karen's full legal name. Before you dig yourself any deeper, Ms. Westbrook, let me tell you what I know about you. Karen's face transformed from shock to absolute terror as she realized that this wasn't going according to plan at all. Judge Judy began methodically laying out Karen's entire history of fraudulent lawsuits, case by case, victim by victim. She described the restaurant incident in detail, including the settlement amount. She revealed the clothing store scam, complete with the owner's testimony about being forced to close her business. She exposed the movie theater performance, the airline meltdown, the hotel fabrication, and the car dealership con. With each revelation, Karen seemed to shrink further into her chair, her earlier confidence completely evaporated. The audience listened in horrified fascination as Judge Judy detailed how Karen had extracted over $100,000 from innocent business owners using the exact same fake crying routine they had just witnessed. But Judge Judy wasn't finished. She produced video evidence from security cameras showing Karen practicing her crying routine outside establishments before entering to make her complaints. She presented screenshots of Karen's social media posts where she bragged about her legal victories and gave advice to others on how to maximize settlement payouts. She revealed bank records showing the pattern of deposits following each settlement. She even had testimony from a private investigator who had documented Karen teaching others her cry-to-win strategy in online forums. The evidence was so overwhelming, so thoroughly researched, so absolutely damning that even Karen couldn't maintain her victim persona any longer. The fake tears were gone now, replaced by real ones, genuine tears of humiliation and fear as Karen realized her entire operation had been exposed on national television to millions of viewers. Her carefully constructed scam that had worked flawlessly for 3 years was being destroyed in real time, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Karen's voice cracked with genuine panic now as she begged Judge Judy for mercy. "Please, Your Honor, I made mistakes, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt anyone, please don't do this to me." But Judge Judy was unmoved by this performance as well, recognizing it as just another manipulation attempt. "Now you're crying for real," Judge Judy observed coldly. "Too little, too late, Ms. Westbrook. You've spent 3 years destroying innocent people's lives and livelihoods with your manufactured victimhood. You weaponized discrimination claims for profit. You turned real social issues into your personal ATM machine. You're not a victim. You're a predator." The final ruling was swift and absolutely devastating. Judge Judy dismissed Karen's case entirely, awarding her nothing. She then approved Robert Chen's countersuit and awarded him $31,000 in damages to cover his lost revenue and legal fees. But the financial penalty was just the beginning of Karen's nightmare. Judge Judy ordered a full investigation into all of Karen's previous cases, with recommendations for criminal fraud charges. She mandated that Karen publicly apologize to every business she had targeted and retract all false reviews and social media posts. She referred the case to the district attorney's office for criminal prosecution. The gavel came down with finality, and Karen Westbrook's career as a professional victim ended in that moment. Robert Chen broke down crying, real tears of relief and vindication streaming down his face as the audience erupted in thunderous applause.